Okay, global environmental issues. Okay, so we are looking at sustainability. So there are a lot of issues regarding sustainability, particularly with regards to global environment issues. Okay, so there are issues regarding the atmospheric issues. Okay, so now we're going into the domain. We're talking about the domain of the sustainability. Okay, so the first is atmospherics. Um, so air pollution. Okay, so air pollution is an issue. Okay, so air pollution typically arises from three different sources. Okay, three different sources. The first is stationary sources such as factories and power plants. So stationary sources meaning that things that are static, that are at a particular place all the time, or for a fixed for a significant amount of time. So for example, factories. So factories, by being there, by doing their processes, it adds to air pollution. Power plants, okay, power plants that generate electricity, okay, they also produce air pollutions. Power plants that generate energy from coal, or other sources, and generate electricity by petroleum. Okay, so these power plants, they are stationary, they are fixed at one place for a long term. They produce air pollution. And then there are air pollution that are contributed by mobile sources, transportation, okay, such as cars, trucks, planes, and trains. So we know that cars, trucks, planes, and trains, primarily they consume petroleum. Okay, and then when they consume petroleum, then there's the effect of petroleum, the gases that are produced by the burning engines. Okay, they produce air pollution. Okay, so those are mobile sources. So basically, transportation that requires burning of certain types of fuel. And then there are natural sources, which are not man-made sources, whereas stationary sources and mobile sources are man-made sources, such as wind-blown dust. So dust, okay, wind. So when wind blows, it produces dust. And then volcanic eruptions. So when there's a volcanic eruption, then the smoke and gas goes out into the environment and pollutes the environment. So those things are natural sources. So basically there are three sources of air pollution. Okay. Besides air pollution, other atmospheric issue is acid rain. Okay, so acid rain usually comes from the gases that comes from industrial practices, or the burning of fossil fuel, for example. They produce nitrous oxides and sulfur dioxides, and these are exposed to air and rain, okay, and produces acid rain. Okay, so acid rain damages properties, damages in particular paints of vehicles. Okay, they are damaged by acid rain, and in fact, and even health also. Okay, people who are exposed to acid rain may pose themselves with health issues. Okay, so acid rain is an atmospheric issue. And then climate change. Okay, so people have been talking about climate change, where there is climate change is the long-term variation in average weather patterns. Okay, so usually climate change, when weather becomes unpredictable. where there is a rise in global temperature. Okay, those are examples of climate change. So the Kyoto Protocol was established. It is an international treaty meant to curb global greenhouse gas emissions by having countries voluntarily reduce national outputs. Okay, so it's some sort of an agreement among the members, so that each country will try to reduce the greenhouse gas emission. Okay, so from a lot of industrial products, consumer products that produce gases into the air produces such a greenhouse effect. Okay, so greenhouse effect where it keeps the harmful rays from the sun from being released back into the atmosphere, but it remains on the surface of the earth. Okay, such that it creates it warms up the earth. Okay, and the use of coal is an area of contention, where coal is something that is contributes to greenhouse gas emission, and it requires countries to reduce the production of greenhouse gas emissions. However, a lot of the poorer countries, their source of energy comes from coal, and therefore if this Kyoto Protocol is to be strictly enforced on the poorer countries, then their standard of living of the citizens will be reduced, because they rely on coal for the production of energy. So imagine if they have less, they want to reduce greenhouse gas emission by reducing the use of coal to generate electricity. Therefore, there will be even more people who are deprived of the use of electricity, and therefore their quality of life will be reduced. So there is a trade-off between environment as well as the needs of the poor people. Okay, so coal is an area of contention, and some countries use a cap and trade, meaning that cap and trade is a concept when an industry or a company that needs to produce needs to engage in more activities that produce greenhouse gas emission, they will somehow in one way purchase the allowance given to other industries that because of their nature, they are producing less greenhouse. So an industry is producing less greenhouse gas, and industry is producing more, but as a whole, every industry is given a cap, given a limit on how much greenhouse gas emission they can make. Therefore, the industry that is producing more will some sort of purchase the rights, or the purchase the allowance to produce more and end up with more greenhouse gas emission. So it evens out. Okay, so besides atmospheric issue, then the next one, a big issue, is on water. Okay, so water pollution is one of the biggest contributors to illnesses in developing countries. Okay, so a lot of countries have a lot of diseases. The citizens have a lot of diseases due to poor quality water. Okay, water pollution. Okay, Environment groups are very critical of U.S. Water policy. For some corporations, the sustainability of water has become a major consideration. Okay, so corporations have started to be concerned with sustainability of water. Some parts of the globe are increasingly worried about water quantity. Okay, so not only the quality of water, but the quantity of quality water. Okay, so on one hand, the water is polluted. On the other hand, there's even insufficient water. Okay, and there's droughts or water wastage. Okay, one of the industry that is or the top top industry that uses or wastes the most amount of water is the clothing sector. Clothing, industries that create clothes, okay, clothes, shirts and so on, clothing. Okay, these sectors, these factories that produce clothing, they are the companies or the industry that takes up most water, use up most water. Okay, well, very obvious, because when they produce water, they produce clothes, they need to wash the clothes. Okay, so yeah, making sure that the clothes are clean, so they need to use a lot of water. And then another issue is with regards to land. Okay, so you have issue with regards to the atmosphere. You have issue with regards to water. You have issues with regards to land. Okay, so the first one is land pollution. Okay, which occurs due to dumping of residential and industrial waste, strip mining, and poor forest conservation. So imagine every household will consume food, and then there are food wastages, and these wastages are returned to the land. Okay, they are thrown into the land. Okay, so there will be land pollution, industrial waste, strip mining. Okay, where when there is mining of a certain mineral, then the land is being stripped. Okay, there will be excavation of the land, cutting the hills. Okay, poor forest conservation, even and then with regards to land, there's waste management. Okay, so waste management is very closely related to land pollution. When there is poor waste management, then the land is polluted. Okay, so dumping of waste into landfills. So a lot of the residential waste are put into landfills. Okay, so some of those wastes are biodegradable waste. So when biodegradable waste are put into landfills, then it doesn't pose so much of a problem. But a lot of times those waste include electronic waste. Okay, so our electronic devices, our handphones, our laptops have some of these wastes which are not biodegradable. Okay, and they are also toxic. Okay, and may have also radiation. So these becomes a very big problem. And then land issue also includes deforestation. Okay, so at the moment the forests covers 30% of the planet. However, the forests are being destroyed for many purposes. Okay, for getting the deforestation happens because people take the timber from the forest to use as to produce buildings, to produce furniture. Okay, by taking the wood from the forest. Also, deforestation also include people clearing up forests in order to provide a land for agriculture. Okay, so they want to produce crops, for example, so they clear up the forest to clear up the land in order to do agriculture. Okay, sometimes deforestation happen because they want to build a new city. Okay, they build a new city in an existing area. They need to clear up that forest and for the city. Okay, so various reasons why deforestation happen, and that will make forests disappear slowly from the earth. And then urban sprawl, where large-scale suburban developments. So when there are cities, but then the suburbs, okay, outside cities are expanding. Okay, urban sprawl. So the urban sprawl will make decay on the land. Okay, with regards to land, also the issue of the biodiversity. Okay, through the actions of human beings, it disrupts the biodiversity of a particular habitat. Okay, so one area that has naturally native plants and native wildlife. However, when humans interfere with that habitat, then the diversity of the animals and plants is disrupted. Okay, the cycle, the food cycle is disrupted, and it becomes unnatural. Okay, and one species will be eliminated or will be extinct, while other invasive species will be dominant, unlike what was happening where the habitat is more balanced amount of different species of wildlife and plants. And then with land, there's the issue of genetically modified organisms. Usually these genetically modified organisms are created to get the best of a certain species of plants or animal, usually for human consumption. Okay, to get the best product, to get the best crop, to get the best corn, for example. So they may mix and genetically engineered the genes of the corns in order to get the corns that have all the best characteristics. Okay, so it is an unnatural way of manipulating the characteristics of a certain plant or animal. Okay, by modifying their DNA. Okay, so shows here created. The genetically modified organism is created through manipulating plant and animal DNA to produce a desired effect, such as resistance to pests, viruses, drought resistance, or high crop yield. So sometimes people make genetic modification in order to make sure that the plant is stronger to face those organisms that destroy them, Okay, and some is to produce more effectively, more production. Okay, with modified genetics, it allows a certain plant to be produced in more abundance, um, shorter um, lifespan, which means shorter time from planting the crops until yielding the output. Okay, so having shorter time meaning that we have more cycles in a year, therefore more products are produced. Okay, so sometimes people use genetically engineered organisms to do that. So it has some negative impact. Okay, so the genetically modified organisms may in the long run destroy the natural ones, the natural organisms that spread out, that reproduces itself in its natural way. Okay, so facing these number of issues regarding atmospheric issues, the water issues, and then the land issues. So countries have come up with environmental legislations to control the extent of to reduce the negative impact the environment faces through human actions. So when we talk about the environmental legislations, this textbook is focusing more towards the American context. Okay, so bear in mind that some of these regulations are from the American point of view. Some other countries may have more different regulations. Some are more advanced, some are quite behind the United States in terms of development of legislations. So in the US, there was an environmental protection agency that was formed with the mission of to protect human health and the environment. So it's not only focusing on the human health, but it's also looking at other biological creations other than human. Okay, and it ensures that Americans, the aim is to ensure that Americans have clean air, land, and water. It ensures that there are efforts to reduce environmental risk, and the efforts are based on reliable scientific information. There are federal laws related to protecting human health and the environment, and these federal laws are administered and enforced fairly, effectively, and as intended. It also wants to ensure that factors such as natural resources, human health, and economic growth are considered in establishing environmental policy. All members of society, from individuals to businesses, have access to accurate information. Contaminated lands, toxic sites are cleaned up. Chemicals in the marketplace are reviewed for safety. So these are the focuses of the Environmental Protection Agency. And in the US, there are regulations that are enacted to address the issues regarding environment, such as the Clean Air Act that regulates atmospheric emissions. So, for example, this Clean Air Act may be relevant when car makers want to bring in new models into the country. They need to, each car model need to satisfy conditions set by various regulations, and one of them will be the Clean Air Act, where the carbon emission, the CO2 emission of the car is within an acceptable level as mentioned in the Clean Air Act. And then there's the Endangered Species Act, which protects endangered species and their habitats. Okay, there are on one hand you have endangered species. On the other hand, you have threatened species. Okay, so endangered species are species that if without any intervention will go extinct in a very short time. Okay, so there are a lot of species that researchers have found that that exist only in a few numbers, and if they are not protected, then they will be wiped off. They will no longer exist in a short period of time. The second category is the threatened species. So threatened species is if there is no action taken to protect the threatened species, then they will go into the category of endangered species. Okay, so the Endangered Species Act is about protecting the species and also their habitat. And then there is the Toxic Substances Control, which tracks industrial chemicals. So companies, factories that produces that goes through production process that emits wastage need to comply with the Toxic Substances Control Act. And then there's the Clean Water Act, there's the Pollution Prevention Act, and within that there is a certification program that recognizes sustainable building practices and strategies. Okay, so building practices, if they follow certain procedures, then they will have that certificate in leadership and energy and environmental design. Then there's Food Quality Protection Act, and there's the Energy Policy Act, which lessens the US dependence on foreign oil. So where the Energy Policy Act will encourage, among other things, to the use of alternative oil or alternative gasoline or petroleum, alternative energy for companies in the US to use.